I'm Steve Hamilton, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
Well, Steve, what an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, sir. Thank you very much.
I want to talk about something that relates to the auto industry to start off with, because I'm sure a lot of people don't know that a byproduct of COVID or a result of COVID was actually the fact that the car industry, when it came down to folks working on their vehicles during the last 2 years, has been an unbridled success. Right? It's like that and Airstream. Tell me about people being at home and deciding that the vehicles that they have in their garage, they actually might want to make them look a little better than they do.
Yeah, so I think there's actually a lot to it, and there's a lot more than just that, right? So the new vehicle market has been kind of suffering, and vehicle production issues have been causing people to take a closer look at their cars in general and what they can do to set their cars apart from other people. Yes, people are stuck in their own houses, turning their own wrenches. But really what's impacted us the most is that they weren't going out to a traditional brick and mortar shop to purchase wheels and tires. And so, as you know, everything's shifting to the internet. Like the percentage of people that buy on the internet increases each and every year. But this has forced some of those people that were like stoic and hardcore, I want to go and look and feel and go into a shop, and it's kind of forced them to change their buying behavior. And I think it's for the best, because we provide such a unique and awesome experience, and it's seamless. And so people are sitting on their computers, figuring it out and ordering wheels and tires. Now, we sell to a lot of gearheads enthusiasts. So these are the guys, tying back to what you asked, that are receiving the wheel and tire packages right at their door and bolting them on in their driveway.
And did that element of it, what you've gone through over the course of the last couple of years? I know you had unbridled success, so we're going to talk about that. But did you think that it could have gotten any busier than what's happened?
It broke our business, actually. When the stimulus checks hit, it tested the boundaries of what we had, and it broke them. We fell apart a month after. So no, we planned for growth, and we probably overhire, and it was madness, complete madness.
And I'm guessing from a business perspective too, labor shortages don't help you necessarily, or logistics and parts issues.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of expense buckets increase on the logistics end. Most of it, UPS, FedEx are definitely raising some rates. They know that they're going to get the business anyway, and they really can't handle current volume, so they can kind of dictate the price that they ask of us. But the inbound stuff, the stuff that we order from China, is where we've seen substantial price increases. Where it was $5,000 for me to get a container of wheels in, now it got up to $35,000. That had some substantial impact. And I forgot what your other question was. You said wages and employees.
Wages and employees, yeah.
So yes, that's been a fun challenge. So as far as the employee market goes, we've had some pretty good success. I think because of like our culture and what it is that we do, it's a lot easier to attract talent and find good people. So surprisingly, we have no shortage of people, and we have a lot of just diehard enthusiasts that love coming to work every day.
So we've talked to many different automotive executives within the OEM or the automaker space, but we haven't talked about aftermarket on this program, which drives a ton of culture. It drives a lot of car decision making. Tell me how big the aftermarket world is, and the growth rate that you've seen generally.
Yeah, the aftermarket world is freaking huge.
That's a metric, freaking
yes.
huge.
I don't remember the exact like data or numbers. I mean, candidly, I've been leading from 25,000 feet for the last year and a half. So I get kind of just our sales metrics, our profit metrics at this point. But I would say that people love to customize their car. They love aftermarket. When I was a kid, what got me into this was wanting to put aftermarket wheels on my Camaro. The factory options just really aren't that great. And a set of wheels in particular can set a car off more than anything else. Now, of course, as we got into wheels and tires, we figured that same consumer is also buying, turbos, exhausts, side steps. And so we ventured into those other sectors, and we're seeing that they're also successful. So the path is there's a lot of runway left for us. And we know that we've only touched a small part of the market segment.
And in general, what types of customers are you seeing? I mean, COVID aside, who were some of your biggest purchasers of all of the parts that you put together?
Surprisingly, like, it's different from what our media metrics show, but by and large, it's that 18 to kind of 50-year-old. I know I'm going really wide here, but like, it's not heavily concentrated on one particular age group. And when we started seeing metrics from our payment processor, we were surprised at like the income level, where it was a little bit higher. Even those that are financing product, the income level is a little bit higher for those that are purchasing these wheel and tire packages. We're not in the, as you mentioned, it's aftermarket. We're not in the OE replacement. So a lot of what we're doing are enthusiast driven. Like our custom offsets brand is a truck, largely a show truck brand, where people are putting big, wide stanced wheels. Fitment Industries, one of our brands, is a car segment for people that want to camber out wheels, or just like really set their vehicle apart from what an OEM vehicle looks like.
SEMA, which is of course the largest aftermarket show potentially in the world, has always been this specialty playground for those who like to do interesting things to their vehicles. And it's always been a little on the fringes, but it's gotten huge. And in fact, I think has spawned this whole revolution in terms of how to take your original equipment vehicle and turn it into everything that you want to be, the customization of vehicles. And then, of course, propelling that forward is all of the media attention around it, the TV shows. I'll go back to Pimp My Ride.
Yeah, I remember.
I
Yes.
mean, you must have seen the velocity of all of this, and I think the cultural impact really shift over the course of the last few years, because I've certainly felt that this has been on a torrid pace.
Yeah. So I've been in this since I was 19. I started the business in 2003. So I was just a teenager myself, on the late end of my teenage years, right? But when I got in it was like 20-inch wheels had just kind of hit the market. That was the big wheel. And then it gradually got bigger and bigger. So Fast and the Furious really kind of changed the market when people wanted to start souping up their Honda Civics, their Subarus, stuff like that. So everything that we were doing back in the day was like 20-inch and bigger, and then tuner. And then the market slowly started to shift away from that. So by 07, 08, there was the kind of the decline of the big 28, 26-inch wheel. And people started getting really conservative. Like it kind of capped at 22-inch. And then it shifted into like truck wheels. So it was just like Chevy truck, F-150, Silverado, Jeep Wrangler. And then now we're seeing the market shift heavy into car stuff again. And we're seeing it shift into big, wide. I mean, for the last 5 years or so, it's shifted back into really big 26-inch, 24-inch. So it's just that basic cycle of and constant cycle of change. And we've been really good at adapting and being on the forefront of it and recognizing consumer behaviors to make sure that we are staying in business and growing.
So where do you take your cues from? I mean, is that Hollywood that you're looking at to say, this is where the trend is going to go? We know that it's not double dubs anymore. Now it's something even more extreme. Is it music? Is it fashion? How do you decide what the next trend is, Steve?
Yeah, it's actually not Hollywood at all. Maybe way back in the day it was, but right now it's looking at what our own employees who are deep enthusiasts are doing, leaning on them for some insight and guidance. But our group of 6 owners that we have are also really, really good at just knowing what looks good and knowing, how the wheel and tire segment are going to progress. I mean, that's just the real easy answer to it, I guess.
You mentioned starting the company at a young age, at 19.
Yes.
Before we get into how you got to where you are, let me ask the question, what attracted you to the industry?
I have always been kind of like, so my well, if we're going to get to my background, we'll get into that, but I've always been a car guy. So, I didn't have any money growing up. And if I wanted to have a car and if I wanted a car to be fixed, I had to do that. So I actually got my first car when I was 14, a 1984 Camaro C28. I still remember the VIN number, which is a silly thing, but
when you were working at McDonald's, right?
Yes, working at McDonald's and before that, when I was 13, I was a caddy. So if I wanted stuff, if I wanted nice clothes, if I wanted really anything, I had to work for it. And those came with sacrifices, but they also helped, build me to where I am now. So always turning a wrench, always really into cars, always dreamt about what I wanted to do to cars. And then, as I mentioned, or actually I didn't bring it up, but when I was 19, I was actually able to turn that into a reality when I got my 94 Z28. This was the first car that I had that was just really nice. and I put some 16-inch Eagle Alloy 077 wheels on it. And that kind of sparked my aftermarket and wheel intuition for years to come.
I want to focus though on your early childhood, because the point needs to be made, especially as we get into the kinds of vehicles that you have right now. You described your upbringing very blue collar. Parents barely made enough to make ends meet. 4 kids living in 1 bedroom. You moved from apartment to apartment. Sometimes you couldn't afford the rent where you were living. 5 elementary schools you went to. And I think the most poignant story that I heard about you, Steve, is showing up to school needing money for needing $5 for a field trip, a trip to the zoo, something like that, and didn't have the $5 check.
Yeah, that happened a lot. I remember Miss Stelter, my 4th grade teacher. She was the sweetest lady. I think we had 3 or 4 field trips, and it was just assumed that I would arrive with no money, and she didn't make a big deal about it. Nobody knew about it. She just said, "I'll take care of it. It's fine." But yeah, quite embarrassing. I mean, we had field trips in 7th grade to Springfield. I'm from the Northern Illinois area. Washington D.C. trip, which is in 8th grade. I think that's pretty consistent with middle schools across the country. But those definitely wouldn't happen. I mean, if my parents couldn't afford $5, they weren't going to afford stuff like that. So I definitely missed out on a lot. But it's crazy how I wouldn't change a single thing about my childhood, because I had a lot of freedoms that a typical child, I think, wouldn't have. And maybe that's just from a general lack of oversight by the parents. But I don't know. It also taught me the work ethic that I have today. It really taught me the value of a dollar. And I still think I had a really fun, good childhood despite the challenges.
And you're an 8-year-old buying snacks at the local grocery store, at the local Aldi, and you're turning around selling them to neighborhood kids, making a buck.
Yep.
And
always had that entrepreneurial knack. And then,
yeah.
And then I would, in 6th grade, I loved bikes, and that later translated into cars, right? So I would also do bike repair. We started up a little bike repair out of my friend's garage, and we were tuning up and fixing bikes, and then even reselling some bikes that we hacked together to make whatever it took to make a buck.
But your inspiration to start SD Wheel. So you're 19. You've had a series of jobs growing up, entrepreneurial jobs. We already know that you didn't come from the best background, and you didn't really like school that much.
Yeah, definitely did.
But SD Wheel comes around. So how does that form?
So SD comes, initially it was Steve's Discount Wheels. That's 19-year-old me coming up with the name that I thought would work well. So the S is Steve's, the D is Discount. Changed that in 08 to make us sound a little more corporate. But I bought those 16-inch wheels for the Camaro that I talked to you about. And I'm looking online for a bigger size, because I immediately was dissatisfied with the 16-inch. I'm like, all right, I got to go bigger. It's been 2 months. And so I'm looking for 18-inch wheels, and I'm looking on eBay, and I'm like, I bought this last set from a Firestone. I'm seeing these online. I wonder if I could, I'm still I don't want to say frugal, but I am very price conscientious. I will go to 5 different car dealerships when I'm looking for a car. And so that behavior has never changed. I was the same back then. I'm like, how can I get this product as cheaply as possible? So quick Google search led to that. The actual distributor, the manufacturer, was like 20 minutes away from my house. So a quick call to them, and they said, "Oh no, you're not a dealer. Like, you can't buy from us." I'm like, huh. So I call back the next day. I'm like, "This is Steve from Firestone. What's my price on that Eagle 077? And they literally did no check. They're like, "Yeah, it's X, X, and X." And I'm like, I go look on eBay, and I'm like, there's like $200 markup on this set of wheels. And like, I couldn't sleep that night. I knew this was going to be something big. I remember being so anxious and then so nervous the next morning to have to walk in there, this young kid, and pitch to them that I wanted to start selling wheels to the internet in a time where internet distribution was in its infancy and drop shipping was kind of a shunned thing. So that's kind of how it was birthed. And I rolled up there in my car, and this is the only there's a lot of great things that kind of happen along the way that were awesome timing. This was the only place I probably could have went into with just a little business card, because I was now installing radios on the side as well. I just showed them my little Steve's Discount radio installation. Yes, that was the name of it. And there's a Steve's Discount theme that happened, and they just signed me up. Like, I didn't need a business license. I didn't need a resale tax certificate, stuff that I learned immediately after getting with them that I would need. I needed none of that. This manufacturer just let me start buying wheels from them.
Wow. You familiar with Randy's story at Bring a Trailer? The one of the
I don't know the
co-founders of
story, but I
Retail.
just bought a car off of there. So I love the website.
Very, very similar story of wanting to
Awesome.
distribute at a different price, and frankly, noticing that the internet just wasn't the place to be able to do what he wanted to do. So that there's that entrepreneurial spirit. You get that too from your grandfather, right? He was a huge inspiration in terms
So,
of your own growth.
so it was my wife's grandfather,
Okay.
Jerry. He was. I met my wife when she was just 15. I was 16 year old. I'm 16 years old. She had a locker right by my friend, and it was like 10 lockers down from me. And so, like, I'm this poor kid that never goes out to eat, goes and enjoys the fruits of real income, I guess. And so they kind of took me under their wing. I think they realized that I was, although rough around the edges, I was a good kid. And they took me out to dinner at places I had never been. They were very generous with graduation and other gifts. And so this guy he owned a siding business. It was called RSG Exteriors. And he was just a really good dude that I admired and looked up to. He helped funnel me into his attorney, his accountant, to help me rapidly get legal as the company took off right when I started. So just a really good guy, and I'm ever grateful for him.
Incredible. Your numbers just a few years ago, I think it was a watershed moment. You were listed on the top 500 of all e-commerce companies in North America,
Yep.
443rd at the time, as well as being the 14th largest automotive parts dealer in the nation. That had to be an incredible achievement for you.
Like I take everything very like way too mellow. Like these achievements happen, and I never feel a sense of satisfaction. It is okay, cool. Like that happened. What is the next thing that I can do? I don't take time to celebrate in the success, because I still feel the same. I know this sounds cliche, but I legitimately feel the exact same that I do when I was 19 years old and just getting off the ground that I do now. And it's just, and I think that's what helps drive the growth is, okay, cool, we did that. Let's move on to the next thing that's going to drive more sales, drive more revenue, and let's not take time to celebrate that, because that's wasted time and efficiency.
Wow, wasted time and efficiency. You must take some moments though to realize the.
Yeah, you really would think like, so there are a couple moments where I felt it like organically. It was, I bought a home in Florida, and for whatever reason, like walking into that home for the first and second and times after that, like just walking in there, I'm like, gosh, this feels really good. Like this is what it feels like to be successful. The moment's gone quickly, but there are so few moments where I kind of felt a quick glimmer of it. But that was definitely one that comes to mind.
Out of all the ventures so far that you've been involved with, what's been the most rewarding? Let me just get to the many things that you're involved in, though. You're a partner and a board member of Enthusiast Enterprises, founder of SD Wheel, co-owner of Custom Offsets, co-owner of MA Performance, co-owner of Fitment Industries. I'm not done yet. Co-owner of Archon Off-Road, co-owner of Mr. Wheel Deal, co-owner of Anthem Off-Road, and now dabbling in the social media space.
Yes. So you bought me some time to think of my answer. Thank you. There are so many companies, and like that's just the wheel and tire. I've got a bunch of properties. I have some Pet Supplies Plus franchises, investments in solar. I own a local microgreens company. So like, I have my cash cow, which are those wheel companies, and then I have a lot of kind of fun projects off to the side that also generate revenue. But it's important to have that cash cow to be able to fund this other stuff and focus all your energy on the thing that really drives the income, and that's the wheel company. So what's most exciting for me was starting Archon, Anthem, Off-Road. Those are wheel designs, or those are brands that we design and manufacture in China, and some of them were designed in the USA. So that is super cool. Right now we're selling like 350 plus wheel and tire brands, but a few of them we brought to fruition. We do all the marketing for, we do the design work, and the margins are higher on those because we're buying them factory direct. So it's just really rewarding seeing an Anthem wheel out in public for the first time, or seeing my first Archon, and being like, that wheel exists because of us.
But let me ask you this though: what's the day in the life like for someone so heavily invested in so many different ventures?
So
does it ever end?
It even like, so I stepped off like 18 months ago and was leading from 25,000 feet, like I mentioned. However, We hired a full like C-suite and team to help manage and scale the company, and they've done a great job. But I found myself getting involved again in mid to early January because we missed some sales targets, we missed some profit targets, and us owners are just really freaking good at helping grow margins and grow sales. So we jumped back in, and where I was working 3 to 5 hours a week on the wheel stuff, I trust me, I still kept a 40 to 50 hour week of you name it. But jumping back in, at first I was a little reluctant and not looking forward to, but now that I'm like back in the driver's seat, it is so fun. And we have made so many changes for the positive, and our leadership has been so receptive and willing to work with us and see our vision. And we're already seeing, rapid positive benefits from this. I'm super pumped about that. But prior to that, like as soon as I kind of jumped off in July of 20, I this is a funny story. I'm sitting in bed with my wife. So I had officially like retired, right? And I'm just laying down with her, and I start braiding her hair, and I'm like, this is the third day of my retirement, and I'm braiding my wife's hair. And like, all right, like that's all I can take. I need to go fill my schedule back up.
Sounds like a new business venture for you.
Yeah, seriously. So I don't even know where I learned to do that. So I'm like, all right. So then I went and stacked my schedule. Like I went and took lean certification classes. I went and got my green belt. I went and got my pilot's license. That took a solid year. I started up the Hamilton collection, which is my own personal brand that is for my car collection.
Well, we're going to get to that.
Ever growing my car collection along the way. And like, I went and just blew my schedule up, and now it's extra tough because I have all that stuff going on. Plus I jumped back in the wheel business, and I'm looking for some normalcy soon, and I'm sure it'll get there.
So let's talk about the cars. In 2018, you purchased your first supercar, Lamborghini Aventador.
Yep. And I actually just sold that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you kept it for 4 years.
Yep. Paid $315K for it, kept it for 4 years, put 8,000 miles on it, sold it for $365K because this market is stupid right now.
We'll get to that.
Yes.
So from there, you've gone on to purchase about a dozen other vehicles, including a $4 million Bugatti Chiron.
Yes.
We could ask the obvious, what's your favorite vehicle? But I'd just like to know, with kind of the same way I worded the question with Jay Leno. If there was a fire and you could only save one car, which car would it be?
Yeah, it'd be the Bugatti. It'd be the Bugatti. I mean, I hate to say it. It's again cliche because but I mean, it would definitely be that. That car it's extremely powerful, fast. It's not overly loud. It's comfortable. It's all-wheel drive. So I can and do drive it in the winter. I just took it out.
Drive it in Illinois.
Yeah, we just threw out a video how we were driving it in like a snowstorm, and we were pulling someone behind us doing snowboarding. So it kind of
that.
Yeah. Oh, and it has curb presence. I mean, anyone that tells you that they get a supercar just for the experience is a liar. There's always some clout. And this thing has everybody knows what a Bugatti is. Everybody knows that it's an expensive car. So in addition to the experience and all that stuff, there's definitely a huge clout factor with it as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So now let's go to the vehicles themselves. Let's talk about the other vehicles you have beyond the Lamborghini and the Bugatti. What else is in the garage, Steve?
You mentioned about a dozen since then, but it's actually closer to 30 vehicles that I've bought. There's a joke that every time I go on vacation, I buy a vehicle, and my wife and I have been traveling a lot too. So that hasn't helped at all. But I have a Lamborghini Countach, a Ferrari 488 GTB. I have a Ford GT, an Audi R8, Corvette C8. I have an 83 Cadillac limousine, a Fleetwood Brougham limo, which is probably one of my favorite cars.
Wow.
I have a McLaren Senna, McLaren P1, a Pagani Huayra, what's the other hypercar? Porsche 918, Porsche GT3 RS, Porsche 1985 Porsche 911 Safari. What else do I have, man? McLaren 765 LT. I'm probably still forgetting a Mercedes SLS AMG.
Probably a few other McLarens you're forgetting in there.
I love them. I love
McLaren. Unbelievable. And what is it that attracts you to certain models?
So with McLaren, I'm going to throw that one out there particularly because they're just built so well. I love like the user interface, the setup with Bluetooth, with just accessing climate control and the silly little stuff like that. But they feel really agile, lightweight. and suspension is amazing, but the power is really, really there. The downside about a McLaren is they're known for reliability issues, and I mean, there are 3 or 4 of my cars in the shop at any given time going through a minimum of a $2,000 to $5,000 repair, and the McLarens are definitely on the higher end of quantity in the shop. But really, really like McLaren, and then you have Porsche on the other end that's a little more mainstream. But like, I can beat the crap out of my cars, and I've taken a lot of them to the track a bunch. And the Porsche is the only one that has not broken down on the track. And I drive that thing as hard as human. I go as fast and hard as I can on that track with that. I cannot break it.
Well, Rob Dickinson of Singer Vehicle Design told us recently that the Porsche was every kind of car you wanted it to be. If you wanted it to be a touring car, a comfortable car, a racetrack car, it could be whatever you want. He said it in a British accent, but it is true.
Yeah, he hit the nail on the head. So for me, it's all about for me, it's about experience now. So before it was, oh, this car looks cool. It was a lot about looks. This car looks cool. This car looks cool. And I think 90% of all the vehicles I've bought, I haven't even driven or seen in person. I look them up online. Again, I'm kind of thrifty. I go find the cheapest one with the best mileage, ship it in. I'm usually not even here to receive it. There's a joke that like, I'm never the first one to drive one of my cars. And it's annoying, but it's just hilarious at this point. And it was more just a shotgun style approach to let's just keep bringing stuff in, see what I like. And now it's more measured. So now it's more specifically about the experience. And once I started buying hypers, I realized that the experience is just so much more fantastic with them. The curb appeal is insane with a hypercar. And then I've also shifted into like the retro / like ambiance, and the cars that bring you to a different time in your life or a different era, like my Cadillac, my Porsche Safari, even the Countach, right? So they don't drive super great, but they're so fun and immersive. And so the new like kind of the new purchasing is going to be hypercars, experience cars, and then harder to find supercars like the 765 LT that I just got would fall just in that regular supercar category, but they're super hard to find, and I absolutely love McLaren, so I had to get one of these.
Well, in fact, you've been fairly public mentioning that hypercars will be your preferred vehicle going forward. Give us a little insight. What cars are in your sight line specifically? What cars do you have on order?
I could do a whole show with you on like the politics behind getting allocations, and it would like I would end up getting in trouble and losing allocations and losing relationships because there's so much behind the scenes, and I hate that game of schmoozing people, and like I don't want to be any part of that. Like I'm just a normal guy, and I just want to have a mutual respect between car manufacturers. But yeah, again, whole other segment there. But for me, if you can take the politics out of it, I just put a new Bugatti Chiron on order, the SS model. It's got the longer tail, and we're trying to do we're working on the configurator right now. I want to get a LaFerrari this year. That's the goal. The LaFerrari will complete the Holy Trinity. It's the P1, the LaFerrari, and Porsche 918. And then the new Holy Trinity is allegedly the Pagani Huayra, the Bugatti Chiron, and the Koenigsegg Jesko, 2 of which I have, 1 of which I have on order. So it's weird because that I almost have the new Holy Trinity before I have the old Holy Trinity.
Wow.
But what else besides the LaFerrari? So I have the Jesko on order. That I'm more excited about that car than anything else. Koenigsegg, Christian von Koenigsegg is, and I know you had him on one of your shows, but
had him on the program.
Way ahead of his time. Like the way the doors open, everything about those vehicles is so exciting. I've never owned one, but I already know sight unseen that's going to be my favorite car once I get it. I've got the Gemera on order. I love taking my I love like taking my kids out to dinner. The wife keeps busy some evenings, and like I'll just have my 3 kids. I'll be able to fit 4 kids in a mega car once that thing comes out. So I'm excited to go take them off to a restaurant.
Oh, those kids.
Yes, I have the new Pagani model, the C10. They've publicly made the code name out there, so I've got that on order. I was super blessed and lucky to get that allocation. What else? Wow,
it's endless. You're incredibly generous when it comes to allowing people to sit in your cars. It's well known. Oftentimes, you even let people drive these multi-million-dollar cars. And there's an old story about a car show that you and your girlfriend were at, now your wife, long ago. And it was about a Corvette and the ability to not sit in the Corvette. Tell our listeners about that story and how it impacted the way that you're allowing people to interact with your vehicles.
Yeah, so this guy had a Corvette and it wasn't even brand new. It was probably 8, 10 years old at the time. Nothing overly special. And my wife's like, "Can I sit in your car?" And the guy's like, "No, no, no." And I'm like, "Really?" And right then and there, it was when I decided that like if I am ever blessed and fortunate enough to have a cool vehicle, I'm going to share it with the world. And so since I've accumulated this collection, I have absolutely let people sit in the vehicles, touch, start them up. Kids are revving them constantly. My friends and I constantly get together, and even some outsiders where we'll go take all the cars to dinner. We'll take them on cruises. There'll be 15 cars out at a time sometimes, and and the same. We are using the cars to do good. So the Hamilton collection, the channel that we started on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, it is a not for profit. So everything that we do, all of the income that we generate goes to charities. We've got some cancer charities, some charities that support minorities, and that's where my heart is. I make enough money. I want to do something that creates good for people. There's a organization called Cal's Angels. It's kids with some with terminal, some with other illnesses, and they came to Iron Gate, which is a local like car condo community, and they had a 16-year-old kid, and we were giving kids rides around the block, and I'm like, "Hey man, how do you feel about like driving my Bugatti?" And so I let him. Everyone was like in shock that I'm letting this kid drive it, but I'm like, at the end of the day, does it really matter? Like I have insurance. This is an experience that he will never get to have. I certainly wouldn't have had it as a kid, and he's also just dealt with some trauma in his life. Like I think the average Joe deserves this, but especially this kid. And so he scared the crap out of me because he showed his very youngness when he drove. I had to grab the wheel twice when he almost went into a curb, but I would still go back and let him do it.
Yeah, amazing story. And you've said in the past, you like to tell people that you own the cars don't own you. So that means rack up the miles. Every mile has a different story to tell.
Yep.
And each car has a different experience. And you've said you love to watch the look on the faces of those who get a chance to drive or to sit in them. And a follow-up to that, what is the better feeling for you? Is it driving the cars personally, or is it seeing the smiles and motivation that it gives other people when you allow them the chance to experience? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, definitely that opportunity to have others experience. Like I wouldn't grow my fleet if I couldn't. I call it a fleet. That sounds funny, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
It's a fleet, Steve.
Yes, it is. I would not be growing this if I couldn't share it with more and more people. Like I look at it as cool. I've got 6 cars now. I can take 5 friends or help 5. But if I've got 20, then I can knock out 20 people at once and give them the experience of a lifetime. So absolutely that look of validation. And you're right that the cars don't own me. We will take these out. Rain. I mean, they probably sit out in front of my house when it's snowing too much, but rain or shine, we've taken cars up ramps, broken them, taken cars off-road, you name it. But like, why not? You own them. Why not have fun with them and do what they're meant? A car is not meant to sit in a garage. It's meant to be driven.
Well, and you fill a lot of hearts with joy with the vehicles that you have on the street. Let's get back to the tire industry. What's the biggest issue facing what you do right now, whether it's tires or parts or wheels? What is the biggest issue that keeps you up at night?
So supply chain issues. A lot of the product is sourced from China. We have an awesome supply chain team. One of the guys in some of my videos, Jeff with the G, works his butt off to make sure we are getting the wheels that we need. But like inflation, I think the inflation was around 7% last year, but it was much higher in the wheel and tire segment. The cost of aluminum nearly doubled. That shipping, as I mentioned earlier, it went stupid crazy. So wheels went up like 25%, and there were just constant price increases all throughout the year that we had to manage. So it's largely supply chain and pricing. Now, fortunately, we still grew 50% last year. We're growing well this year.
Wow.
But I think probably supply chain. And then, as we dabble into other sectors, we look at gas. I mean, the abolition of gas vehicles as a real risk, where I'm very cautious about investing into a performance parts company for internal combustion engines. I'm probably more on the all electric side because I have 3 Teslas, and Tesla is changing the game. That's my daily. I will not ever buy a different daily than a Tesla. They are amazing vehicles.
How is Tesla changing the game?
They are 3 years ahead of the curve on technology. Like I've driven a lot of cars. I have an Escalade on order with the Super Cruise. I hear that's the closest candidate, but still nowhere near Tesla's capabilities. But the tech is incredible. The autopilot, I can just sit and veg out and have it take me into the city. Crash avoidance, the comfort, and the battery weight distribution across all four wheels. It's a low center of gravity, good weight. So I can whip my wife's Model X around in the winter and I'm getting amazing traction. And most importantly is there's no lag. So I'll go race my Bugatti against my Model S Plaid that I just got. And hands down in the winter, it's going to crush the Bugatti all day long. In the summer, it's going to keep right up with it. And off the line, it's going to beat it up to 60, 70 miles an hour. And this is a $135,000 car versus the, $3 to $4 million Bugatti.
Have you ever interacted with Elon Musk to tell him this?
So we wrapped my Plaid in Plaid wrapping paper and put it out my driveway with a big bow. And they shared our post, which I thought was the coolest thing, that Tesla has my car on their page. But that's the closest I've ever gotten on interacting.
What would you tell Elon Musk if you could say something to him?
That guy, I love everything that the guy is doing. And like, I like that he's, there was a complaint that came out about how the autopilot had killed some people. And then his argument was, but how many people has it saved? And it would be like, I'm with him. Like, people need to look at it through that lens, where of course some lives are going to be lost and it's a tragedy, but let's not forget that he might be saving or building a foundation to save hundreds of thousands of lives in the future. And I appreciate that. I think it would be a big thank you and a big wet kiss on the cheek.
We will share that with him. When you think about everything that you've done and think about how far you have come, Steve, I know you don't take a lot of time to think about these things, but you must have an enormous measure of satisfaction for where you are today. The story that you told about where you began, going back to the car that you own, working at the McDonald's, going back to the Aldi, going back to selling food to your classmates,
Sure.
snacks. There must be an enormous sense of pride and a limitless future.
Limitless future, sure. With my mindset and my goal-oriented brain, I would say so. Satisfaction is hard. Like it's hard to sit here and revel in that. I dress in sweats and a t-shirt all day, and nobody has any idea that I have this huge fleet of cars. Like I blend in really well, but that's also the same way that my personality is. Like I'm not, in my opinion, I'm not elevated above anybody else. And so, I hear that I'm a super humble guy. Saying that is it's odd. It's an oxymoron, me saying that I'm humble, because I think that you're not humble if you're telling people you're humble.
I'm humble. Just listen to me.
That's what I hear. And so it's still hard for me to, I just feel like a normal guy. And I do really, like, I feel satisfied that I can take this money and that I can have very good flexibility with my schedule. I can go take this money and travel. I can purchase largely, what I'm excited about. Travel is huge for me, by the way. I think that's where I get my most, and it's not that I'm satisfied that I've accomplished this. It's more just, wow, I'm so lucky and blessed that I can go take a week and go to Hawaii, and I've got awesome people managing my business.
What's your advice for entrepreneurs out there? What about the young, the 14-year-old who is working at McDonald's today?
Yep. I've got a lot of kids that are being, I don't want to say misled, but I have mentored and spoken with a lot of young teenage kids that everybody wants to be their own boss. And I think that's phenomenal. But I also think that there's going to be a wake-up call that influencers on social media have an agenda. They want to make money. They want you to sign up for their program. They've tricked a lot of these kids into thinking that anybody can do it. And every time I'm starting a mentorship, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, you want to be a business owner? Great. What is your idea? What's your new product, your new service, your improvement upon an existing product? What app are you going to start? And then when I hear the answer, like, I don't know, I'm looking to you for guidance. I'm like, all right, well, that's what separates someone that's tricked from an influencer from the true entrepreneur. So it's important that they realize that there is a lot of work and time sacrifice. And it most importantly requires an idea. Now, once they have that idea, that's where I can come in handy. I'm not charging any, and there's a lot of calls I'll take all week long, and I'll never charge for my work. I'll commit to that now. I will never profit from any advice that I give. But once they have that idea, that's where I come in handy. I can help them, build a brand, market, source product, go through the perils, the hurdles that I've faced along the way. And so just kind of summing it up, it's not easy. Make sure you have that idea. And then you are going to sacrifice time. You are going to sacrifice a lot of your life to bring this idea into fruition if you want it to be successful.
Amazing.
Thank you.
What's next? Finally, what's next for you? What are we going to see when we have this conversation a year from now? What will you have accomplished as an entrepreneur in the last 12 months? And don't tell me better hair braiding.
I think I'm ready to take some chips off the table. I and the other owners are ready to sell the minority portion of the business. I think like a PE firm or however we do it can help us bring in additional people to really help with our goal to scale this thing. And then it will give me enough cash where I can be very comfortable for the rest of my life. And once I have that, I'm probably selling. So I look at all my other businesses and ventures as second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th leg to stand on. Once I have that nest egg in the bank, and again, I do okay now, but there's the more that you make, the higher your expectation and the higher the need of cash that you have to get you through the rest of your life. That's just the way it is. And
the faster the cars.
Yes. So
you just talked about buying a Koenigsegg. I mean,
I know. Two of them. So yeah. So once I have that there, it's okay. Now I'm gonna simplify my life. I'm gonna sell my properties. I have a great regional manager that oversees my Pet Supplies Plus stores. I'm gonna find a way for her to play an even bigger role. And then I'm just gonna focus on, still having my ownership in the wheel companies, but I'm gonna do labors of love. So I'll continue growing the Hamilton collection. And then I am super pumped about starting things that bring you back to a different era. So having some meetings this week to build the foundation for that, where I can bring a 50s restaurant and not just a silly, and I love eating, if I didn't mention it before, just going out and half of the fun is the ambiance and the experience for me. Half of the fun is the food. I'll go somewhere that has crappy food if I walk in and I feel like I'm being transcended into, I don't know if that's a word, but brought into a different era or feeling. So I want to create something that is like 50s hyped up. You walk in and you're like, I can't differentiate from actually like being in today versus the fit. Like, I feel like I am in the 50s. And I think what's gone away is a lot of the shows and the dancing. So there's a scene in Pulp Fiction where John Travolta are sitting in Jackrabbit.
Thurman's sitting there. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe not quite that tacky where the servers are dressed up like Buddy Holly, but there's a show, there's a dance off, and I want to do that. I want to, and even if they don't make money, I want to bring a drive-in theater back. There's one that shut down 3 years ago. I want to be part of that experience to bring that back to the community. So enriching the community with stuff that's kind of with this stuff.
Incredible story. You have transported us into a whole new realm here, by the way, just through this interview. An inspirational story. Steve, thank you so much for being on Cars and Culture. We look forward to all that you have coming in the future, including the vehicles that will be in your fleet that we'll love to catch up on later.
Thank you for having me. It is an absolute honor to be on your show. This is a fun and awesome show, and I really appreciate you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The automobile is one of the most important inventions that revolutionized the modern world. In America, the rich history of car culture runs deep as technology continues to shape the future of the industry. Jason Stein,
former publisher of Automotive News,
is here to share the stories of people passionate about cars, from industry leaders and innovators to car-obsessed celebrities. Buckle up as Jason takes you inside the boardroom, onto the track, and around the bend on Cars and Culture on SiriusXM Business Radio.